Hello and welcome to episode 3 of iNTAKE Insights. I'm Nicoara and this is where we look beyond the dance floor at the culture, technology, business and difficult questions shaping electronic music and nightlife. In this episode, we move from football stadiums and Belgian beaches to citywide parades, illegal villas parties and artificial intelligence performing techno through a holographic body. We begin with Joyhauser, whose new track The Reset has become the official soundtrack of the Belgian Pro League. Then we examine who carries the financial risk behind nightlife, from Boho Village's fine and Tomorrowland's record results to fake tickets websites and ticket swaps attempt to control resale prices. From there we follow an extraordinary 10-day festival pulse. Electronic music appeared at every possible scale, from beach bars in Blankenberge and massive production in Zeebrugge to the streets of Zurich and Berlin. In Ibiza, a total solar eclipse became a part of the island's entertainment economy, while fewer visitors spent more money and authorities intensified their fight against illegal villa parties. Finally, Reinier Zonneveld plays Air 2, an AI train on his own musical archive, beside him on stage, leading us into Gemma's copyright victory against Suno and the new boundaries being drawn around AI-generated music. Let's begin here in Belgium, where techno has found an unexpected new home, the football stadium. Joyhauser have written the new official anthem of the Belgian Pro League, and there is something almost symbolic about that. The duo, consisting of Jorins Silen and Steen van Spouwen from Belgian Pro League, created a new track called The Reset in collaboration with Belgian composer and producer Sonhouse. The new anthem takes inspiration from the previous Pro League soundtrack created by Sonhouse together with Soulwax in 2020, but Joyhauser have transformed it into something faster, harder and much closer to the sound of contemporary techno and trance. There is a 45-second version designed to be played inside football stadium shortly before kickoff, while the complete track lasts approximately 3 minutes. But this story becomes even more interesting when you look at the personal connection. Before becoming internationally known as half of Joyhauser, Joris was a football player himself. He continued playing until the age of 21, including in the Belgian 3rd division, before a serious knee and cartilage injury brought that ambition to an end. Now, years later, his music will be played before professional football matches across Belgium. That is why he described the project by saying that the circle is complete. There is another circle here as well. Joyhauser started organizing small techno nights at Jeugdhuis De Haaf in Belgian Pro League in 2010. For their 15th anniversary, after playing clubs and festivals across Europe, America and Asia, they returned to the same youth club for an intimate anniversary performance limited to only 180 people. From a small local youth club to international festivals and now into Belgian football stadiums. For techno, that journey also says something important. This was once music that existed primarily inside underground clubs, warehouses and alternative communities. Today, its sound is being used to create anticipation before a professional football match. Does that mean techno has become commercial? That is a much bigger question, and we will return to it in another episode. For Joyhauser, The Reset is not only another release. It connects their local roots, Joris' unfinished football story and their current place in Belgian electronic music. From a youth club in Belgian Pro League to professional football stadium, this time the circle really does feel complete. From football stadiums, we move to a side of electronic music that is rarely as glamorous as the stage. The money behind nightlife. Let's begin in Blankenberge with Boho Village. After years of complaints from neighboring residents, the company behind the summer venue and its operator received combined fines of 68,000 euros. 56,000 euros for the company and 12,000 for the operator. The case involved repeated problems with noise, permits and respect for the venue's operating conditions. The court described the situation as showing a clear lack of respect for the rules. Boho Village has not disappeared. It remains active and agreements had already been introduced with the city and police to reduce disruption. But for a seasonal venue, a fine of this size demonstrates how quickly pressure can build when nightlife and its neighbors cannot find a workable balance. At the opposite end of the Belgian event economy, we have Tomorrowland. WeAreOne.World, the international group behind Tomorrowland, reported consolidated revenue of 305.7 million euros for 2025. That figure covers the complete group, including international festivals and other activities. It's not simply the revenue from Tomorrowland Belgium. The result is remarkable because the 2025 Belgian edition almost lost its main stage to a major fire shortly before the opening. The organization constructed an alternative stage in less than 2 days and continued with both festival weekends. According to Belgian reports based on the company's accounts, the group recorded approximately 32.5 million euros in net profit and distributed its first dividend, 21 million euros, to founders Manu and Michiel Beers. This is an impressive story of resilience and commercial success. But criminals were also using Tomorrowland's success against its audience. The cybersecurity company CloudSec identified around a dozen fake websites targeting people searching for tickets, travel packages and accommodation. Some copied Tomorrowland's branding and genuine festival information. They used countdown times to create urgency and even invented a so-called biometric registration process to appear official. Besides payments, some collected identity information that could later be used for fraud. To be clear, these websites had no legitimate connection to Tomorrowland. The festival operates an official exchange desk. However, for the 2026 Belgian edition, fans had to register unwanted tickets before the end of April. A resale was not guaranteed and a €10 refund fee was deducted when a ticket was sold. This creates an uncomfortable gap. The event sells out quickly. Fans who can no longer attend have a limited official resale window. People who miss the sale continue searching, and criminals position themselves between those two groups. This brings us to ticket swap and another controversial attempt to control the secondary market. On selected events using its organizer resale system, the organizer can impose a minimum resale price. The original buyer sells the tickets back to the organizer once a new buyer is found, and the organizer resells it. Ticket swap says permitted prices often range between 80 and 120% of the original price, although national rules still apply. In Belgium, ticket swap currently lists a maximum of 105%, and fees affect what the seller recovers. The argument for a minimum is understandable. If tickets costing €100 suddenly appear for €30 or €40 before an event, people may stop buying early and wait for desperate sellers. For smaller organizers facing high production costs and slow advance sales, that can make planning even harder. But the criticism is understandable too. The event has already received payment for the original ticket. If the customer becomes ill or has to work, should the organizer still decide that the customer cannot sell it for €40? On some organizer resell events, even part of that amount earned above the original price can be shared with the organizer. So is this protection against destructive price dumping, or does it transfer more control and risk towards the fan? Boho, Tomorrowland, fake ticket shops and ticket swap are not examples of the same behavior. One is a court judgment, one is a successful entertainment group, one is involved in third-party criminals, and one is a legitimate platform testing a new business model. But together, they reveal something about the modern event economy. The venue wants to survive, the organizer wants predictable sales, the platform wants safe transaction. The fan wants flexibility and a fair chance to recover some money. And when those interests collide, the most important question may not be how expensive the ticket is. It may be who is expected to absorb the loss. After looking at the financial risks behind events, it is worth remembering what all that planning, investment and uncertainty is ultimately trying to create. A moment when people gather around music. What made the period from 6 to 15 August remarkable was the concentration. Within 10 days, the same broad culture unfolded at almost every imaginable scale. We can begin here in Blankenberge, where I have watched one part of that evolution happen directly. 10 years ago, I opened the summer season at Rave Cafe with a DJ set alongside some friends. As I remember it, Rave was the only beach bar in Blankenberge that was presenting live music regularly. Not long afterwards, Salito Beach entered the picture and began hosting DJ sets from time to time. Now, you can find DJ at several beach bars. If they normally close at 8 p.m, on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays and public holidays, that can remain open until 9. A special event can be authorized no more than once per beach bar location each month, extending its opening until 11 p.m. But the individual beach bars are only part of the picture. Beside the Belgian pier, Blankenberge also has the event beach, a dedicated section of the coastline where a full-size stage and the necessary event infrastructure can be installed for larger productions. The 2026 program includes Kids at the Pier featuring the Catnet band K3 aka Kadri and DJ Catnet, 5 VRT Zomer hit shows and Retro Beach. That creates a complete spectrum for coastal entertainment. DJs playing at individual beach bars, family concerts, national television production and electronic events capable of transforming a substantial part of the beach into a dance floor. So the development is clearly visible, but it remains controlled. Music now operates at several different scales along the coastline, while nightlife, tourism and the people living nearby still have to share the same space. A few kilometers away, the scale became dramatically larger. On 8 August, David Guetta brought the first beach edition of his Monolith show to Zeebrugge. More than 35,000 people gather around a huge audiovisual structure built from screens, lighting and lasers. Guetta is not a techno artist, but he is one of electronic music's biggest global figures, and the production illustrates how completely DJ culture has entered territory once occupied primarily by stadium concerts. The same weekend, UNTOLD in Cluj-Napoca demonstrated another level of European festival scale. The Romanian event recorded more than 500,000 attendances across 4 days and 9 stages. UNTOLD is not exclusively electronic, it combines EDM, techno, pop and live acts, but DJs remain central to a production operating on the scales of Europe's largest music festivals. In Amsterdam, Loveland filled the Slotterpark with house and techno across 8 and 9 August. Now, in its 31st edition, the festival brought together 72 artists, balancing influential techno figures such as Robert Hood, Ben Clock and Rothat with house and crossovers names including Jamie Jones, Fatboy Slim and Eric Prydz. The longevity is particularly notable in a city where permits, capacity restriction and strict closing times have made larger outdoor dance events increasingly difficult to organize. Meanwhile, Zurich transformed an entire section of the city. Approximately 900,000 people attended the street parade, dancing around Lake Zurich to more than 200 artists performing across 9 stages and 26 lovemobiles. Adam Beyer played a particularly visible role. Drumcode hosted the opening track, where he launched the parade at 1 p.m. before returning for the final set on the opera stage. That stage also featured Rampa, Maceo Plex, Marlon Hofstad and Daria Kolosova, while the wider program stretched from house and techno to trance, drum and bass, psytrance and hardcore. The following weekend, attention returned to Belgium. XRDS brought more than 50 artists to Parc des Etangs in Brussels on 14 and 15 August. Curated by Fuse, it offered an underground alternative beneath the city's motorway structures. Its adventurous lineup moved from Ben Clock and F-Jack to Malgrab, Colin Benders and Donato Dozzi. At the same time, WECANDANCE transforms Zeebrugge beach through music, fashion, food and visual design. Across more than 100 artists and 5 stages, its program ranged from another Mo P, Damian Lazarus and Helena Lauert to the harder sounds of Sarah Landry, I-Hat Models and Nico Moreno, with club veterans Felix the House Cat and Taiga providing a link to an earlier generation. Back in Blankenberge, the sold-out Retro Beach looked backwards instead, bringing together the sound of Bonsai, Cherry Moon and the Belgian clubs of the 1990s and 2000s. Cherry Moon legends DJ Ghost and Yuri Parker shared the program with Bonsai All-Stars vs Frankie Kluk, Pat B, Thorax vs BPM and several others familiar names from Belgium's retro scene. On 15 August, Berlin provided another kind of electronic gathering. Rave The Planet continued the legacy of the Loveparade as a demonstration for peace, diversity, human and recognition of electronic music culture. More than 300 artists were announced across more than 30 independently programmed floats, including Dr. Moat, Westbam, Maceo Plex, Panpot and Simina Grigoriou. Elsewhere in Berlin, the Fuckparade returned with a harder and more confrontational identity. Founded as a protest against the commercialization and the disappearance of independent cultural spaces, it favors gabber, hardcore, speedcore, breakcore and industrial sounds. Unlike the carefully promoted festival lineups around it, the Fuckparade did not build its identity around start billing. The sound system crews, political banners and protest against rising rents and club closure were the message. It was also at the 2000 Fuckparade that anonymous dancer, later known as the Techno Viking, was filmed. On the same date in Sparrenwoude, Reinier Zonneveld premiered a new holographic live show in which his R2 system became both a musical collaborator and a visual character. The experiment will close this episode. But first, we need to rewind 3 days and travel to Ibiza, where a total solar eclipse became part of one of the island's most extraordinary weeks. On 12 August, attention around the world turned towards the sky.
Zie? Ja, iemand heeft een hapje gegeten van de zon.
Ja, dat is vies.
Here in Blankenberge, I watched the partial eclipse with Leticia and the children and captured a little footage of our own. But further south, Ibiza stood directly inside the path of totality. At approximately 8:32 in the evening, with the sun already low above the Mediterranean landscape, the island entered in almost complete darkness for around 75 seconds. It was the first total solar eclipse visible from Ibiza since 1905. But this is Ibiza, a place that spent decades turning sunsets into experiences, so even the disappearance of the sun became part of the program. Pike Presents held its Eclipse edition at 5 to 8 Ibiza, where DJ Harvey played throughout the outdoor session before the party continued inside until 4 AM. Cova Santa connected the eclipse to the 10th anniversary of Wu Moon, with Sven Veit among the announced artists. Ushuaia incorporated the spectacle into an outdoor Elro production. On the public beach at S Arenal in Sant'Antoni, the Feels Like Eclipse Festival brought together Jamie Jones, Frankie Rizzardo, Miguele Entons and Alex O. At sea, catamarans and private boats gather around the western side of the island and Esvedra. A special environmental operation inspected 665 vessels around Ibiza and Formentera, moving 14 that had anchor above protected Posidonia seagrass. None of this automatically makes the celebration wrong. Music can give a shared natural experience another emotional dimension, while organized events can provide transport, security and medical support. But the eclipse also exposed the pressure created when almost every extraordinary moment becomes a commercial opportunity. The S Arenal Festival was ticketed despite taking place on a public beach, provoking criticism before it began. After the event, San Antonio Mayor Marcos Serra said he would not authorize it again, following complaints about the enormous concentration of people and insufficient police resources. That tension becomes even clearer when we look at Ibiza's tourism figures. In June, Ibiza and Formentera received 560,121 tourists, 4.75% fewer than during the same month in 2025. However, their combined tourist spending increased by 5.94% to just over 690 million euros. Average spending reached 1,232 euros per visitor and 249.51 euros per person per day, the highest daily figure in the Balearic Islands. This number covers Ibiza and Formentera together, and they represent 1 month rather than the complete summer. Still, they reveal the direction of the market. Fewer visitors can generate more money when prices rise and islands attract, or increasingly dependent upon people prepared to spend heavily during relatively short stays. Economically, that can look like a more efficient form of tourist. Socially, the picture is less simple. Higher spending does not automatically mean less pressure on housing, roads, beaches, emergency services, or the people who live there. And beside the official nightlife economy, another version of Ibiza continues operating behind villa walls. On 10 June, police interrupted an illegal event on protected rural land between Bruscastel and Saint-Mathieu. Approximately 1,000 people were inside. This was not a spontaneous gathering that had unexpectedly grown too large. The site contained several music areas, bars, catering, portable toilets, generators, entry wristbands, parking staff, shuttle buses, private security, and a carousel and a medical tent with an ambulance. In other words, it had much of the infrastructure of a professional festival, but none of the required authorization. The proposed fine was initially 300,000 euros. After the organizer acknowledged the facts and waived their right to appeal, the amount was reduced by 40% to 100,000 euros. The case also challenges the romantic idea that every illegal rave represents an underground alternative. Britain's M25 orbital raves of the late 1980s were frequently large, ticketed and commercial productions even while operating outside the law. The free party and free techno movements that followed developed a more explicitly autonomous culture, often based on collective sound system and free or donation-based entry. That culture later spread across Europe, including Belgium and the Netherlands. The Ibiza villa economy can borrow the secrecy and energy of the underground while functioning as a luxury commercial event without the permits, taxes and responsibilities imposed on legal venues. Ibiza's Nightlife Association has even proposed refusing future bookings to DJs who perform at illegal villa parties, while island officials have called for clauses covering this in artists' contracts. For now, that remains a proposal, not an island-wide legal ban. So Ibiza now presents several economies at once. The official clubs can turn a total eclipse into a program, a smaller number of visitors can generate record daily spending, and illegal operators can reproduce much of the festival experience inside a private villa. The question is no longer simply whether Ibiza is becoming too expensive or too regulated. It is who is allowed to turn the island into an event and who is left carrying the cost. From an island where even the disappearance of the sun became part of the show, we move to an artist who plays an artificial version of himself on stage.
Every system has a choice. Red pill, blue pill. Enter the signal.
Dance with the devil!
On 15 August, Reinier Zonneveld premiered the new version of his Air 2 show during the 3rd edition of his own festival. He performed inside a specially constructed hexagonal stage equipped with an integrated holographic system. Visuals were projected from several directions and synchronized with his live performance, creating something far more immersive than another large LED screen behind the artist. The central visual character was another Reinier, a holographic counterpart representing Air 2, the AI system performing alongside him. Air 2 was not simply playing a pre-recorded sequence. The system analyzed what Reinier was doing, generated musical responses and interacted with the same analog machines that have shaped his sound, including the Roland TR-909, SH-101 and the TB-303. So yes, Reinier performed live with his AI counterpart. But this was not a conventional back-to-back in which two DJs took turns selecting records. It was closer to a musician improvising with a second musical brain, trained using more than 80 days of recordings from Reinier's own musical archive. Giving that second brain a holographic body also addressed a problem encountered during earlier versions of the project. If the audience cannot tell when Reinier stops making a decision and the AI begins, the technological collaboration remains invisible. But giving Air 2 a physical presence, the hologram made that exchange part of the performance itself. The result was visually spectacular. Air 2 no longer felt like software hidden somewhere backstage. The holographic figure gave the system an identity, turning the exchange between human instinct and machine-generated responses into part of the show. But the project also raises a much larger question. Not simply whether AI can make music, but whose music it learned from. Reinier says R2 was trained exclusively on his own archive. That places it in sharp contrast with the copyright dispute between Suno and GEMA. GEMA is Germany's collective management organization for composers, lyricists and music publishers, roughly the German equivalent of SABAM in Belgium. It represents more than 100,000 members and also administers the rights of almost 2 million international creators through agreements with collecting societies in other countries. On 31 July, the Munich Regional Court ruled that Suno had infringed copyright involved 6 works represented by GEMA. The court ordered Suno to disclose relevant revenue and pay damages that have not yet been quantified. Suno disputes the decision and could still appeal, meaning the legal battle may continue. Only days later, Suno opened a waiting list for Suno Vinyl, a planned service allowing users to select up to 46 minutes of music from their Suno library and have it pressed onto a customized 12-inch record. Users will also be able to create or upload artwork for the cover and labels. The estimated price is $45 plus shipping. But Suno is also tightening its own system. Beginning on 3rd September, free users will receive only 7 lifetime trial downloads for personal, non-commercial use. Pro subscribers will receive 20 downloads per month, while Premier subscribers will receive 60. Premier users working through Suno Studio will remain exempt from these limits. Existing songs will remain playable and shareable inside Suno. However, the restriction will apply whenever files are exported, including songs created before the September deadline. At the same time, music platforms are drawing their own boundaries. Beatport now rejects music generated fully or mostly by AI. AI-assisted tracks can still be accepted when the finished production remain majority human-made, although those releases will be tagged during the submission process. Bandcamp prohibits music generated wholly or substantially by AI. Tidal does not completely ban it, but it labels fully AI-generated tracks and prevents them from earning royalties. Spotify has not banned all AI-generated music either. From mid-September, it will introduce AI persona badges for profile representing fictional AI-generated artists. Their music will be excluded from Spotify's editorial and personalized recommendation by default unless a listener deliberately follows the AI persona. Spotify is also targeting unauthorized voice clones, deceptive uploads, and the mass-produced spam. Europe is beginning to add another layer. Since 2 August, important transparency provisions of the European Union's AI Act have become enforceable, including requirements intended to make certain AI-generated or manipulated content identifiable. For now, R2 offers one possible direction: an AI that identifies itself, learns exclusively from material its creator owns and stands beside the artist rather than quietly replacing them. The technology is impressive, but in the end, transparency, consent, and control may matter more than the hologram itself. And that brings us to the end of episode 3 of iNTAKE Insights. From Joyhauser entering Belgian football stadiums to the financial pressure behind events. From extraordinary days of festivals to the competing economies of Ibiza. And finally to Renier Zonneveld sharing the stage with an artificial version of himself. Electronic music has always evolved through technology. The question now is not whether AI will become part of that evolution. It already has. The question is what kind of relationship we want to build with it. I'm Nicoara, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.